Catsters, it's Dr. Karyn. At the risk of sparking some debate, I have a confession to make. Sometimes I scruff. If you'd like to read up a bit more about this controversial topic, check out the article on catster.com. Restraining a cat by their scruff was, until recently, quite a common thing to be seen both at home and in veterinary practice. When seeing a mother cat carrying her kittens by the scruff, we made the assumption that this was a perfectly safe and reasonable way for us to also carry cats and restrain them. But we have learnt more since then. Restraining a cat by the scruff can trigger quite a stress response, and what we might interpret as a calm response is actually a stress behaviour. So many practices have moved away from using the Scruffhold restraint, with some declaring themselves to be a completely scruff-free zone. Although I think it's right to minimise the use of the Scruffhold, I personally think that ruling it out completely is somewhat unrealistic and impractical. And here's why. Sometimes we have to do something for our cats that may cause them discomfort, pain, or stress. If there is something that needs to be done for the safety and health of your cat, and it needs to be done quickly and in a swift, stress-free way, sometimes a Scruffhold is actually the best way to go. There are exceptions to this, and that is certainly if we have a cat that has pain or an injury in the scruff region, or if you are dealing with a cat that has an extreme adverse reaction to the Scruffhold. And believe me, you will know it when you see it. The fact that many cats almost go floppy when taken in a Scruffhold has given us the false impression that it is a relaxing way to restrain a cat. However, we now know that this is more of a stress response rather than a calming response. And this is why many of us have moved away from using this particular form of restraint. However, the fact that it does elicit this type of response means that if we need to do something quickly and safely, this may be the best way to do it. For example, if you have a cat that has a thorn or a dangling claw that needs to be addressed quickly, a Scruffhold may be the best way forward. Veterinary practices that have declared themselves to be scruff-free zones will argue that there are different ways to approach these sorts of problems using alternative methods of restraint, or even using sedation or general anaesthetic. And that's absolutely true. But with something that is very minor but needs to be addressed quite quickly, I would argue that a lengthier restraint method or using chemical restraint is not in the best interests of the cat and not necessarily in the best interests of the owner. Obviously, sedation and anaesthetic does carry some risk, and it certainly will carry an increased cost. Here are the situations that a Scruffhold is not appropriate for. Anything that is a prolonged procedure, clipping all claws, grooming a cat, bandaging a limb, anything that's going to take more than, say, 30 seconds is not something that should be done with a Scruffhold. We shouldn't be using a Scruffhold for our own convenience because it's easier for us, and we definitely shouldn't be using a Scruffhold to transport or carry our cats around. These are huge no-nos. However, if you've got something very quick to do, very minor, then you need to safely, quickly restrain your cat, then a Scruffhold may be the best and actually least stressful way to approach that, because I would rather my cat be briefly uncomfortable and stressed than to have a situation or a problem drawn out more than it needs to be just to avoid the Scruffhold. This came up recently when a friend of mine was really struggling with medicating their cat. They tried the cat burrito wrap, they tried hiding the medication, they tried using the pill giver, and they were absolutely at their wits' end. They were at the point of considering booking the cat in for a long hospital stay so that they could get medication in. This was when I broached the subject of using the Scruffhold. Although it's not the ideal technique to medicate a cat, it is a way that can allow you to quickly and safely administer a tablet to your pet. As you can see, Cyril is pretty laid back, and he has agreed to help me with demonstrating the correct way to Scruffhold a cat, depending on what you're doing it for. Now, the thing when you're holding a cat by its scruff that you will notice is that most of the time their front legs will extend out. This makes it safer for us because they're less likely to actually scratch. By holding the scruff, they are less likely to be able to turn and bite, but it's important to have the correct hold. If you don't have the right hold, then it is just as dangerous as not using a scruff hold for them and for us. If you have a cat that reacts very violently to just light pressure in this area, stop. This is not the technique for them. One of the biggest no-nos when it comes to scruff holding a cat is to hold the scruff and lift the cat. The only time that that can ever be appropriate is if you are needing to safely remove that cat from a situation and perhaps place it into a cage. Otherwise, you should never, ever be carrying or lifting a cat by the scruff. If you do need to quickly move a cat using a scruff hold, this is the way to do it. What I would need to do is to, if possible, run a hand over the back of the head with a pat. If you can approach this slowly, that's great. You won't always be able to do that. So if you need to get that scruff, you come over the back of the neck, grab it fully in your hand, support underneath and behind the front legs. So you need to support behind the front legs, pick up and move away. That is the only way to lift a cat using the scruff. You don't carry them around with it. It is a lift and move. That's the end of it. Most of the time, if you're using a scruff hold, it is on a surface and it is to keep them safely at that surface. So Cyril, our most chilled out feline, is going to help us out with a little demonstration. So let's say Cyril's torn his nail and we need to quickly pull that because it's causing him pain. There are other ways that we could address it. We could sedate him, but if we can see that all that needs to happen is to quickly pull that claw, he's either too sore or stressed or afraid to let us do that without this type of restraint. Here's what we need to do. Like we did with Clutch, we give him some pats, we work our way back. If I can, I work up to a scruff hold doing this. This also allows us to assess if we are dealing with a cat that violently resists the scruff hold. I can see that Cyril is not one of these cats, so this allows me to take that scruff. I can then pull his head out of the way, and it then allows me to have good control over his leg so that whoever is helping me can now help and remove or pull that claw or assess the situation better. If it is something that is going to be more involved than just trimming or pulling a claw, so not everyone is going to agree with my views and my opinions about using a scruff hold, and that's absolutely okay. It's important that if you are in a situation where your cat requires this sort of restraint, whether it's you doing it yourself or perhaps your cat is at the vet and needs this kind of restraint, it's important to know how it should be done safely. So remember, only use a scruff hold if it's absolutely necessary. If the alternatives are going to be more stressful, more painful, more drawn out than if we use the scruff hold, and it should never be used for our convenience.